all of this with the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Adam Schiff. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
You bet. Good to be with you, Wolf.
Do you believe General Flynn's Fifth Amendment rights extend to business documents related to his foreign work and payments?
No, I don't. And we have also been turned down in our request by Mr. Flynn to come and testify and provide documents. So we are going to be entertaining the same options in terms of our subpoenas, which I hope will go out shortly, to obtain these documents. There are court decisions that provide there may be a limited Fifth Amendment right in terms of document production, but it is only limited. I don't think it does extend to businesses. And even with respect to the person of Michael Flynn, if these are documents that are that the person, the target, is known to possess, then their testimonial character is a lot less. And even those documents may not be covered by a invocation of the Fifth Amendment. So we need to pursue these documents aggressively.
Are you prepared to hold General Flynn in contempt of Congress?
Well, I share the views that you just heard expressed by Senator Burr, and that is it was our preference initially to get these documents and testimony voluntarily. It's now going to be necessary to subpoena it, and if the general refuses and does so without a good legal basis, then I think we do have to explore the use of contempt.
When you say explore, I assume your staff and your experts have been looking through what it would mean to actually file contempt charges against General Flynn.
Well, we've started out in the hope that the witnesses that we've invited would come in and cooperate voluntarily. I'm sure that a great many will. Obviously, some won't. But we don't go into this presuming with most of these witnesses that we're going to have to fight to get their testimony or documents. But we will be vigorous and have to be about getting the information. So our next step, I think, is to tailor our subpoenas with the best chance of success. But we'll also be doing our own legal research to find out what further steps are necessary if we have to go the route of contempt.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like a threat. As you know, Senator Warner, who's the vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, said immunity is off the table for General Flynn. Is that also the case for your committee, the House Intelligence Committee, even if it would compel Flynn to speak out?
I think it's certainly premature to be giving it any kind of serious consideration. I think we ought to find out everything we can without providing any immunity. If we determine that there is some essential testimony, then we'd want a detailed proffer from Mr. Flynn or General Flynn about what he would have to say. But none of this would go forward without having a long discussion with Bob Mueller to find out what are the prosecutorial equities and what would we be foreclosing if we ever did grant immunity. So count me as very skeptical, but we're certainly a long way from making any judgment about that.
Former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, former Trump advisor Carter Page, they have complied with a Senate Intelligence Committee request for documents. Has your committee, the House Intelligence Committee, seen those same documents?
We have made requests. I don't want to get into particulars about the documents that we've received, but we certainly want these witnesses to come and testify. And at this point, I don't want to go into specifics, non-public specifics, about whether we're getting a refusal from those witnesses or full compliance.
Director of National Intelligence Dan Coates was asked about the report that President Trump asked him to deny any evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. Coates said he didn't think it would be appropriate to characterize his private conversations with President Trump in public, but said that he would be willing to speak before an investigative committee. Here's the question. Will the House Intelligence Committee ask him to do so?
I would certainly like to have him come before our committee. I'll have to obviously get the acquiescence of my partner, Mr. Conaway, in this. But he'll be appearing before us in closed meeting or closed session. I certainly intend to ask him those questions, but I would like to do it sooner than later. I think it's important that we get to the bottom of this.
Will you do the same with the National Security Agency Director, Admiral Mike Rogers?
Absolutely, and we meet quite frequently with both of these directors. At least we did certainly with Director Coates' predecessor. I imagine that we'll be continuing to do that with Director Coates as well as Director Rogers. So we will be asking these questions. We also, will want to find out if either one of them or their staffs made notes of these conversations. had a concern about it, but Congress really needs to find out whether there was an active effort to interfere with the investigation or to draw in the intelligence agencies or their leadership in a way that would politicize the agencies.
We're told that the conversations, Senator, that President Trump had with former FBI Director Comey, DNI Director, the current one, Coates, the NSA Director, Admiral Rogers, were in fact documented either by the men themselves in memos or by staffers working with them. First of all, have you seen any of those memos? And if you haven't, can you obtain them?
I have not seen any of the memoranda, so I can't confirm that they exist or what they have to say. But we will be trying to get those memos. I think ultimately it's only a matter of time before we do. And I mean, again, if the public reports are accurate, that would be very concerning. But I think we need to make sure that we get the evidence first, and then we can make a determination about just what that shows.
It wouldn't be extraordinary for these kinds of memoranda to exist, contemporaneous memoranda, right?
It wouldn't be extraordinary, and certainly, you know, it's been publicly reported that Director Comey kept a lot of vigorous notes about meetings that he thought were significant. I think that very celebrated incident that he had in the hospital with the former Attorney General Ashcroft, he also had documented in detailed contemporaneous notes, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if that was true of Director Comey. If there were also agency personnel that were concerned about efforts that the President was making vis-a-vis Directors Coates and Rogers, it's very possible that their staff made a memo to file about it, to document it as well.
When you look at all of President Trump's actions together, Congressman, his firing of the former FBI Director James Comey, the conversations with his intelligence, the comment to top Russian officials that the Comey dismissal eased pressure on the investigation. Is this, as some of your Democratic colleagues have suggested, obstruction of justice?
Well, I certainly think that if these allegations are true, they are unethical at a minimum. Whether they rise to the level of obstruction of justice will depend on what the President's intention was and whether he had a corrupt intent to influence in a way that would impede the investigation. So we need to get to the bottom of it. You know, again, we're still in the category of allegations that there are memoranda that would confirm these things. I'm looking forward to Director Comey coming before the Congress to testify in open session. I think that's going to be very important. And again, I want to underscore just how essential it is that we have hearings like the one we did today with Director Brennan, like the one that will be coming up, I hope soon, with Director Comey, to inform the public as we go along. The role that Bob Mueller has is very important. He'll ultimately make decisions about whether people should be prosecuted, but he may not be able to say much and inform the public much about what he learns. That's really our job in Congress, to share as much as we can without compromising our investigation anyway, to bring the public along in what we're doing.
And without compromising the special counsel's investigation at
Absolutely.
the same time. Your Democratic colleague, Elijah Cummings of Maryland, the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, he wrote a letter saying that General Flynn gave false statements to Pentagon investigators about his foreign work. What can you tell us about that?
Well, again, I can only speak to the public reports about this, but if it's accurate that General Flynn reported only money he received from the Speaker's Bureau and didn't disclose that the money really came from RT, this Russian entity, this propaganda arm for the Kremlin, that would be a real problem. So if that's what Mr. Cummings is referring to, it is a very serious issue. And then, of course, you have other issues involving whether Michael Flynn made false statements to authorities during the course of the investigation, as well as whether he could accept the monies in the first place or whether that violated the Emoluments Clause. So there are a lot of legal issues. I think there are going to be a lot of decisions for Bob Mueller ultimately to make, but Congress, in its oversight role, needs to fully get to the bottom of this as well.
I want you to listen to this comment, Congressman, made by the former CIA Director John Brennan during his testimony today. Listen to this.
Frequently, individuals who go along that treasonous path do not even realize they're along that path until it gets to be a bit too late. And that's why, again, my radar goes up early when I see certain things that I know what the Russians are trying to do, and I don't know whether or not the targets of their efforts are as mindful of the Russian intentions as they need to be.
The use of the phrase treasonous path, very significant. How do you refer to other members of the Trump campaign?
Well, he was very careful, as you might imagine, not to talk to specific people or identify specific people in his testimony today. But there were a few things that were very notable to me about it. The first was that he pointed out this wasn't just contacts between the Trump campaign and Russians in isolation. This was taking place because, of course, there are contacts between Russians and Americans all the time. This was taking place between a presidential campaign and Russian officials at a time when the director was aware that the Russians were embarked on a brazen effort to interfere in our election, in our democracy. So it's the context that I think set off the alarm bells for the director. And he also responded to questions about the Russians' use of cutouts and their oligarchs to influence, to entangle people. And it's in that context I was thinking about, I think he was talking about how people may be initially unwitting that these people they're dealing with are actually agents of a foreign power. They're agents of the Russian government, of the Russian intelligence services. So you might get into a relationship, a business relationship or other relationship, unwittingly, and then all of a sudden find yourself entrapped within the Russian web. But those are two, I think, distinct worries the director articulated. One, that these contacts were going on in the context of the interference with the election, and another, that you could have other contacts where the person may be even unwitting of who they're dealing with.
Do you think that happened in this particular case between Trump associates and Russian agents?
Well, that's really what we need to investigate, and I think the director was absolutely right. We've had access to a lot of the information that the director provided to the FBI. I think he was right to do so. I think the FBI was right to embark on its investigation. So I think those are exactly the steps we would want our intelligence and law enforcement professionals to take. They took those steps. And now in Congress, we need to make sure that we follow the evidence we're also obtaining to its logical conclusion.
Congressman Adam Schiff, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Wolf.